Emerging Threats Hub. The Gray Zone Awakens, Hybrid War, Drone Walls, and the West's Readiness Test.
What happens when the line between peace and war simply evaporates? We often think of conflict in binary terms. We are at peace, or we are at war. But looking at the global landscape today, that binary is collapsing. We are entering an era where infrastructure is severed under the sea. Drone swarms probe borders without warning, and diplomatic guarantees are tested not by treaties, but by the resolve of societies. Welcome to Emerging Threats Hub. I'm your host, Sébastien. Today, we are analyzing a profound shift in the international security architecture. We are moving from a world defined by traditional military standoffs to one dominated by the gray zone, a space where hostility is real, but the declaration of war never comes. On this episode, we will examine the proposed 15-year security guarantees for Ukraine, a diplomatic construct designed to replace the ironclad promise of NATO membership. We will look at Europe's struggle to build a drone wall against Russian asymmetry, and we will confront the uncomfortable reality of European military readiness, or lack thereof, as highlighted by senior officials in the UK and Germany. This isn't just about hardware. It is about the ideas and identities that drive our security. From the hybrid attacks in the Baltic to the bureaucratic deadlock of the Franco-German fighter jet program, the question remains: are our institutions adapting fast enough to the reality our adversaries are constructing? Let's dive in.
Active conflicts. The Ukraine endgame.
Our first major focus today is the evolving strategic calculus around the war in Ukraine. And here we see a classic clash of paradigms. For months, the discussion has been dominated by a realist perspective: territory gained, territory lost, the sheer material balance of power. But recent developments suggest a pivot toward a constructivist reality, where the perception of security is just as critical as the number of tanks on the ground. We are seeing reports of a potential meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump. Central to this shift is the American proposal of a 15-year security guarantee for Kiev. Now, why 15 years? In international relations, a guarantee is only as strong as the belief in it. NATO's Article 5 is powerful because it is an identity. It binds nations together in a collective self. A bilateral 15-year deal, however, is a time-bound contract. It attempts to construct a reality where Ukraine is secure, without the shared identity of NATO membership. The concern, from a constructivist view, is that this creates a frozen conflict, not by geography, but by diplomatic design. If the guarantee is viewed by Moscow as temporary, it may not deter future aggression. For Kyiv, the push is for something more binding, something that changes their identity from a contested buffer zone to a permanently secured Western state. This brings us to the human and strategic stakes. A 15-year horizon might provide a temporary ceasefire, but it risks institutionalizing instability. True de-escalation here requires more than a paper promise. It requires integrating Ukraine into a security architecture that adversaries perceive as irreversible. Without that shared identity, the guarantee remains just words on a page.
Tech and tactics. The drone wall.
If diplomatic guarantees are the software of security, then air defense is the hardware. And that hardware is facing an unprecedented challenge. We are witnessing the dronification of warfare. According to recent analysis, Russia has implemented a mandatory dronification rating system for its regions. This is a top-down mobilization of society, a centralized effort to turn the entire Russian economy into a drone production machine. They are treating unmanned systems not just as a weapon, but as a strategic necessity. In response, Europe is proposing a drone wall, a defensive shield along its eastern border, to counter these incursions. But here's the tension. A wall is a passive defense. It reacts to a threat. Russia's approach is active and total. While European nations debate procurement and budgets, Moscow is utilizing a command economy to bypass market inefficiencies. This asymmetry highlights a flaw in the liberal market approach to defense. The European Union relies on cooperation between sovereign states and private industry. That is a strength in peace, but a liability in high-speed conflict. The drone wall is a necessary physical barrier, but it is also a metaphor for the broader capability gap. To secure their airspace, European nations must do more than buy sensors. They must construct a shared industrial identity that matches the speed of their adversaries. They must decide, is defense a national prerogative or a collective European public good?
Thematic Deep Dive: The European Strategic Crisis.
This leads us to the critical question of the day. Is Europe fit to fight? The headlines are stark. General Sir Richard Barrons, a former senior British commander, has stated that the UK is not fit to fight militarily, citing a lack of public resolve as much as a lack of equipment. In Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz has admitted that the country faces daily hybrid attacks from Russia, and perhaps most symbolically, the Future Combat Air System, or FKS, the massive Franco-German fighter jet project, has been postponed indefinitely. From a realist perspective, this is a failure of material power. The guns aren't built, the soldiers aren't ready. But from a constructivist perspective, this is a crisis of identity. The delay of the FCAS project isn't just about technical difficulties or money. It is about the clash of national identities. France and Germany, the historic engines of Europe, cannot agree on the future of their defense because they cannot agree on the hierarchy of their strategic interests. France wants strategic autonomy. Germany wants security guarantees. The project is stalling because the idea of a united European defense is weaker than the specific national interests of its members. Furthermore, the concept of strategic decadence, a term used in recent security reports, suggests that Western societies have lost the will to prioritize defense. We have constructed a reality where war is seen as a historical anomaly, not a recurring feature of the human condition. Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, recently argued that European defense should not be independent from the US. This is a pragmatic, realist admission, but it undermines the liberal ideal of a strategically autonomous Europe. So, how do we solve this? The solution isn't just spending more money. It is a cultural shift. Europe must reconstruct its self-image from that of a civilian power to a security power. This requires public education, political honesty about the threats in the gray zone, and a willingness to cede some national sovereignty to create a truly integrated defense market. If the ideas don't change, the procurement lines will remain broken.
Under the radar.
And now, time to go under the radar. This week, while the world watches the skies over Ukraine, a quieter battle is taking place beneath the waves. Finnish authorities have seized a vessel suspected of damaging the Baltic undersea cable in the Gulf of Finland. Alongside recent sabotage of communication cables in the North Sea, points to a troubling new normal: the targeting of critical undersea infrastructure. Why does this matter? Because 90% of intercontinental data travels through these cables. They are the nervous system of the global economy. This is gray zone warfare at its purest. It is designed to inflict damage and create fear, stopping just short of the threshold that would trigger a full military response under Article 5. It tests the West's definition of an attack. The takeaway here is that our physical infrastructure is vulnerable, and our legal frameworks are struggling to keep up. We need new international norms that treat critical infrastructure as protected sovereign territory, regardless of where it lies on the map. Protecting these cables is as vital as protecting any border. So, what have we learned today? We have seen that the 15-year security guarantees for Ukraine attempt to construct a new reality of safety, but they lack the binding power of shared identity. We have analyzed the drone war, where Russia's centralized mobilization clashes with Europe's fragmented market approach. And we have confronted the strategic decadence in Europe, where the failure of projects like the FKS fighter jet reveals a deeper crisis of unity. The connective tissue here is that the international system is not a rigid structure of iron laws. It is fluid. It is being rewritten every day by the actions of states and the resilience of societies. The path to stability is not to surrender to the pessimistic determinism of realism, which tells us conflict is inevitable and we are doomed. No. The path forward is constructivist. We must actively build the institutions, the legal frameworks, and the industrial capabilities that make peace possible. We have the power to define what security means for the next generation. But to do that, we must first wake up to the realities of the gray zone. Thank you for listening. If you found this analysis valuable, please subscribe and share it with someone who is looking for clarity in a complex world. Visit us at emergingthreatshub.com for more in-depth briefings. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay analytical, and keep looking for the solutions beneath the headlines.